two Xbox Pro controllers, both with instant hair triggers, both with 4 additional buttons, both with the word Pro in their title, and crucially, both are wired only controllers on Xbox. Yep, this is the SCUF Valor Pro, and this is the GameSir G7 Pro, two very popular Xbox Pro controllers which have a very similar feature set, although they do go about it a little bit differently when it comes to the implementation. But which of these two is better, and which one should be your new Xbox Pro controller, if any? Well, in this video I aim to help you decide. To do this, I will be putting these two controllers head to head in 4 review categories, talking pros and cons in each, seeing who takes each section, all before tallying up the scores at the end. Before we get started, I will mention that both of these controllers were purchased by me with my own money, and I have used both of them for a significant period of time, so you can be assured that, as always, all of the views expressed in this video are my own with no outside influence. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into it. So why do I feel that this is a viable comparison between these two controllers? Well, there are a number of reasons, but primarily it comes down to these two. Well, firstly, they come in at a very similar price point, so are obviously targeting the same audience. And secondly, as I mentioned, they are both wired-only controllers on Xbox. Now, there is full-on wireless versions of these controllers available, but in regards to this video, this is why I feel it is a viable comparison. But what areas are we going to be putting these two up against each other in then? Well, starting off, we have the price and checking out what's included with a purchase. Secondly, the design and the key features. Thirdly, we will be taking a look about how customizable each of these controllers are. And then lastly, we will be putting these controllers through their paces in the playtest. So let's get started and talk about the price. And as I briefly said, they come in at a similar price point. So they are definitely in heavy competition. The SCUF Valor costs around £100 in the UK, the US about $100 and in the EU €100 respectively. The G7 Pro clocks in at around £90 in the UK, the US $80 and in the EU around €100, so a relatively similar price as mentioned. Included with a purchase, both controllers do give a number of added extras, but one package is definitely more generous. With the SCUF Valor Pro, we of course get the controller, a 10-foot USB cable, 2 additional thumbsticks, some button blanking plates, and the instruction manual. While in contrast with the G7 Pro, we are supplied with again the gamepad, a charging stand, a 3-meter USB cable, a wireless dongle to connect to PC, 2 additional D-pads, a cord grip, the instruction manual, some stickers, and a Game Pass code. To me, it's pretty clear in this section that although they both have a comparable price, the G7 Pro does come in slightly cheaper while also giving us a greater bang for our buck. But as we all know, there is more to choosing a controller than just the price point. So let's move on to an area where we discuss what attributes these controllers have and how they differ on each, as we talk about the design and key features. Now in this area, I'm going to quickly run through the highlights of both of these gamepads, but if you do want to see a more in-depth review of both, remember that I have a dedicated video for each on my channel, so remember to check that out if you are interested. But diving right into the design, and as you can see, both share the same standard Xbox layout, offset thumbsticks and button placement. Both have textured grips around the thumbsticks, bumper buttons as well as on the triggers, and both also have rubberized side grips, although to a greater degree on the Valor Pro. The Valor is slightly larger, with a more pronounced handles and wraparound bumper buttons, while the G7 Pro is more compact with stubbier side grips. Aesthetically, they are both good looking controllers in my opinion, with both looking premium. I am a huge fan of the Shadow Ember G7 Pro, while the Valor Pro looks super clean. Although the dials at the bottom of the controller does take a bit away from the overall look if you ask me. Moving on to the features, and they both share a number. They both have super clicky hair triggers. They both have stick drift free thumbsticks, both have 4 additional button inputs, and both have multiple profiles. But some of these features are implemented a bit differently. The thumbsticks on this version of the Valor, for example, are Hall effect, so yeah, stick drift free, but the G7 Pro has superior TMR thumbsticks. The triggers both have an instant trigger option and both feel great, but the ones in the Valor are the better triggers in my opinion. And again, they both have 4 additional programmable buttons. The Valor has the more traditional 4 back buttons in a similar area, whereas the G7 Pro has 2 rear back buttons and 2 mini bumper buttons on the top of the gamepad. Now, this is definitely personal preference as to which is better, but to hear what I prefer, stick around to the playtest area of this video. So we've talked about what similarities these controllers have, but what features do they have that make them differ further? Well, starting with the Valor, and one of my favourite features are the wrap around bumpers. They're designed to ease the flow between trigger, face button and your bumpers, and allow us to hit the buttons from pretty much any angle, which helps to speed up our gameplay. Additionally, the Valor Pro also has two dials on the bottom of the gamepad. These are used to quickly set our headset volume as well as the chat mix. Much better than a series of button presses, which is the case on the G7. When it comes to the features that the G7 Pro possesses that the Valor Pro lacks, I'll have to mention the cross-platform compatibility. Now yes, I am making the main focus of this comparison that these are both wired controllers for Xbox, but it would be remiss of me not to mention that the G7 Pro does also function fully wirelessly on PC as well as on iOS and Android devices, so that is definitely a factor. The G7 Pro also comes with clicky micro switch face buttons, which could be a pro or a con, but for me, they are the kind of face buttons that I prefer. So engaging the overall feature set, there certainly is near parity. Many of the same features, but implemented in different ways. And I guess in this area, it might come down to if you prefer the 4 back paddles of the Valor, or the 2 back buttons and the 2 mini bumper buttons on the G7 Pro. But that's us done with the features. So now we should move on to which is the more customizable controller. But before we get there, I'd like to thank each and every one of you who watch my videos, share, and of course hit the like button. But I have noticed that well over 90% of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. Now, while I appreciate all of the support I do get, the best way to support the channel is by hitting the subscribe button just down here. It's easy, it's free, and it helps me to continue making review videos just like this one. But anyway guys, let's get back to the video. Again here, they have a few things in common. They both have configurable profiles, meaning you can swap if there is a certain preset you prefer for a certain game, or if a different player is playing. They both offer removable faceplates. Now, no extra faceplates are provided, so there is an extra cost, but it is an easy way to switch up the look of your controllers. We can also bind pretty much any controller function to our back pedals and additional inputs, leading to greater possibilities in-game. They also both come with a few extra attachments that we can swap out. The G7 Pro has a couple different D-pads, while the Valor gives us some extra thumbsticks. I prefer the default with both if I'm being honest, but great to see included nonetheless. But that is where the similarities end when it comes to customization, and from here on out the G7 Pro takes the spotlight thanks to the GameSir Nexus companion app, where we can not only set profiles and bind buttons, but get into the nitty gritty details like setting our thumbsticks or trigger dead zones, meaning we can really set the controller up to suit us better. Now SCUF are working on their very own companion app for the Valor, but for now this gives the edge in customization to the G7 Pro. With this area covered, let's move on to probably the most important comparison section, the playtest, and let's see how they perform under use. As always, let's talk about how they both feel in hand, and which I prefer. Now overall, they're both comfy controllers. Each fits well, although the G7 Pro does feel a tad smaller, which could be a problem if you do have larger hands. Thanks to the rubberized grip on both, I never felt like they were going to slip throughout my gameplay time. When it comes to the grips themselves though, the Valor Pro is just better. It cushions nicely in hand, but it probably might wear quicker than the ones on the G7. Touching on the back buttons, and on the G7 Pro, the 2 on the back are relatively well placed. But because they are built into the controller's shell as opposed to folding around your finger like on the Valor, accidental button presses can be a possibility. On the Valor, the bottom 2 paddles feel great and easy to actuate. But unfortunately, the top 2 paddle placements just feels a bit awkward for me to hit comfortably. To be honest, I've always struggled with 4 back buttons and have tended to use 2 when I play. But I have always felt I could do more if I was comfortable with this layout. But this is why I am such a fan of the additional mini bumper buttons on the G7 Pro. It lets me bind functions to that I don't feel comfortable using on back buttons usually. YYing, for example, just feels perfect here, as it is super close to your trigger finger, so shoot, YY, then back to your trigger. So for me, I much prefer the implementation GameSir has gone for here. I'm also more fond of the micro switch face buttons on the G7, as well as the TMR thumbsticks. They just feel more accurate than the ones that are found on the Valor. Although you should be aware that there's now a TMR Valor Pro version available, which is a welcome upgrade. As I mentioned earlier, they both have fantastic triggers, but I give the edge to the Valor Pro in this area. I'd argue it has a little bit less travel in the hair trigger setting, and although they are both great, it is a tad more satisfying. I also love the bumper buttons. I've never seen bumpers like these before. The wraparound design does take some getting used to, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't throw an accidental grenade from time to time. But once you get the hang of them, they really do help with the overall flow of the controller. For me, the SCUF Valor Pro overall is a more comfortable controller. The form factor and finish give it a more premium build, while almost melding into your hand. Yet, I do prefer the implementation on the G7 Pro. I love the mini bumper buttons and back button combo, and personally, it helps me perform better in game. Now, as you have no doubt guessed, these two gamepads are definitely targeting the shooter player. The feature set and design just has them tuned to this experience, and it's easy to see why. The triggers, back paddles, bumpers and thumbsticks all add up to give us advantages in these kind of games. I'll also mention that on PC, both the Valor Pro and the G7 Pro offer a 1000Hz polling rate, which again helps us perform to our best. So there we have it, 4 review areas covered, and it's time to tally up the scores. For price and overall package, I've given the point to the G7 Pro. It's the cheaper controller and we just get more included for our money. For design and key features, I'm going to have to go for a tie. I was tempted to go for the G7 Pro again because of the wireless functionality on PC as well as mobile. But I felt because the main premise of this video was about Xbox console controllers, I'll be fair and give a point to each. In terms of cosmetic customization, they are very even. But because of the GameSir Nexus companion app, I've given it to the G7. And lastly, when it comes to the playtest, I have swithered quite a bit. Now, I love the way that the Valor feels in my hand. It just has a more premium build. But when I actually come and think about it, when I go to play, when I go to pick up a controller, I pick up the G7 Pro. The mini bumper buttons just feel natural to me. I love the face buttons and the thumbsticks just feel better in my opinion. So when I go to sit down to play, I prefer to play with the G7. So there we have it, and with the scores all tallied up, the G7 Pro takes it 4 points to 1. So that's the controller you should get, right? Well, as with anything, there'll still be so many people that prefer this controller. It's still a great controller, and if your preference is for back paddles, this is a great choice. But for me, yeah, this is the one to go for. It's the better package overall, it has better features, better customization, and the mini bumpers, to me, are a game changer. So when it comes to the question of what is the better controller, the SCUF Valor Pro or the G7 Pro, for me, it's the G7 Pro. But all of that is just my thoughts, and I would love to hear your take in the comments below. Am I bang on, or am I miles off it? Or is there anything else that is better than both of these controllers? Remember to let me know in the comments below. I'll also remind you that if you do want to know more about either of these controllers, I'll leave a link to them round about here in the video for you to check out in your own time. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and of course consider subscribing to see more review videos just like this one. But anyway guys, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll catch us.